Fear always gripped Mataku's heartlight in a cloying embrace. It held, strong, sometimes stronger than whatever might the greatest Konohi Pakari could bestow upon you. It marked him a coward, but that was no surprise. Mataku already knew what he was, a coward. He saw it, he felt it, wherever he went for whatever he did. When he pined for the easiest tasks in the village, when he refused to step a foot past the main gate after dark, when he wouldn't risk even a finger on his shop's own forge. The little Matoran held no illusions as to why he did these things, or why people looked at him with such contempt every time he did them. He was a coward, out for himself and his own pride, plain and simple. And that silent resignation held true even now, as his legs desperately tried to propel his aching body across a scarred battlefield far from home. The rest of his squad was dubiously absent, and best left out of mind. Quakes shook the ground with increasing vigor, best left out of mind. The unstained dagger at his belt rattled, singing for action, best left out of mind. Rusted metal clanked, warriors grunted and cheered, somewhere, everywhere. Behind a hill or a rock Mataku refused to narrow down, best left out of mind. Better to run, better to hide, if the opportunity ever presented itself. Even surrender had occurred to him once or twice, but at the very least that felt like a line even Mataku wouldn't cross. Not that the aggressively and violently single-minded laborers of Stelt would ever give him the chance. It was hard to believe the Matoran's little makeshift rebellion had only kicked off a month ago. Trenkram Peninsula notwithstanding, the northern continent was famous for being so much more lush and fertile than the regions Mataku knew of its southern counterpart. But you'd be forgiven for mistaking the contrary now. Weeks of thoughtless battle had raised the green to ashen boughs and bare wooden limbs. A putrid black smoke hung in the air now, the aftermath of relentless artillery. Its all-encompassing mass put the skylights to rest, casting the land in a brackish dusk without end. Every breath burned as he tried to push his run further with another bound. But still he ran, for he knew nothing before him, nor the fatigue waylaying him, could compare with what marched behind him. Another quake rattled the earth, closer this time. To his immediate regret, Mataku chanced to look behind him. A nearby hill had erupted, rendered fragments of dirt and ash. The culprits, a pair of the usual Steltian brutes, beady red eyes of beaked white faces glaring down from a mass of navy blue armor. They saw him, targeted him. Another kill for the count. The muscles in Mataku's legs screamed as he tried to wrangle one last burst of speed from their sinew, darting back on course. The ground trembled in a steady heartbeat. No doubt the two bruisers attempting pursuit. It took all Mataku's strength not to let his flashing heartlight leap out of his chest in fright. If he could just keep far enough ahead, he might reach his escape route yet. And just a ways away... Yes! Mataku almost blurted aloud. His gaze found it, a metal hatch, tucked away in the soil, easily missed to the untrained eye. It was how he and his fellows had gotten around the battlefield unseen, their greatest advantage, and right now, Mataku's greatest hope. There was just one problem. It was closed. Locked from the inside, no doubt, as was protocol. They left me, Mataku realized. His pursuers didn't give him time to process the thought. One opted to find another way to close the distance, his tiny legs granting him a surprisingly high bound. A crash brought him down to the earth, planted squarely between Mataku and the hatch. The impact sent the Matoran falling off his feet, the momentum of his sprint rolling his body through the soil. The Steltian grinned with biting cruelty. No more tricks. He stomped forward. No more games. Another stomp more. We crush you, here and now. Turning over his shoulder, he whistled into the ragged air. On prompt command, a dozen more bruisers arose from the various hills and wooded debris around them. At last, they all surely thought, some entertainment. Get up, a voice chided, so similar to Mataku's, and yet entirely alien in its tone and assertion. It disturbed him, but at the same time it called to him, stirred something within him all the same. Get up, you idiot. He couldn't. Stand with him. He shouldn't. Mataku's legs remained frozen, stricken with the same fear that gripped his heart. His hand reached down, grasping the hilt of the dagger at his side. Only a token gesture, surely. "It doesn't have to be," the voice assured. Perhaps. No plans, no arms, but at least he could go down with some fledgling dignity. Or stupidity. It didn't matter. He still couldn't stand. He still couldn't move. He couldn't even draw his own blade. He could already feel that small flicker of steel in his nerves rust away. This is it. There it was, his own voice now, much more familiar. Pitiably so. Of that, he was as sure as he was of his own doom. The only thing he wasn't sure about was whether to cover his eyes or cover his ears to smother the horrible shrieking that was filling the air. Wait, shrieking? Why would the Steltians be... Mataku's head darted up, hand relinquishing his blade back out of thought. It was no Steltian this time. The bruisers fidgeted, the noise putting even them a bit at unease. Mataku couldn't even put a proper analogy to it. Just a strange, light whistle cutting into the back of his head, prickling his Kanohi mask. Too soft to be deafening, too loud to be ignored. But there was one thing he knew. It was getting louder. Heads turned upward. As the whine grew, so did its apparent source, skyward, still unseen among the black and gray. The sound was becoming increasingly more familiar, and Mataku felt like an idiot that his mind kept coming up empty, fishing for the word. It's like a firecracker, or a mortar, or a falling star. High above, the looming array of smog began to part. The first light in ages finally shone down upon the land. A heavenly column of golden luster, almost blinding to eyes so numbed by shadow, and through the window, 2 streaks of color flew with grace, red and white in hue, searing as fire, chilling as ice. They were coming, falling, straight for the group with unrelenting aim and purpose, the shriek that foretold their arrival as loud and unambiguous as ever. Mataku knew he should be afraid, and yet all he could muster was awe. Somewhere deep down, with an almost religious certainty, he knew he wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. The Steltians stumbled back. As the dust cleared, 2 figures stood bathed in light in its stead, clad in curved utilitarian armor. A pearly white figure held aloft a silver scythe, the other ashen black and dark crimson, bearing an impossibly massive hammer, belching fire from its core. The right word finally found Mataku's lips. "Toa," he whispered. The red and black Toa glared down upon the surrounding warriors. He slammed the hilt of his hammer into the ground, the thunder of a gavel's judgment. "You have brought a blight here, harm and sorrow upon innocence undeserving." His voice boomed, its bass rattling the armor of the enemy before him. He raised his hammer overhead. "No more." His hammer shook the earth harder than their arrival ever had. Its flames from within erupted outward, flailing every which way in celebration of their newfound freedom. The Steltians tried to mount a charge, and failed as quickly as their plan came. Fire and magma swatted them away like flies. Any that attempted to foil the Toa of fire from a distance with Kanoka discs were quickly met by his partner, streaks of ice from the tip of his scythe, freezing their arms in place. Their actions synchronous, their duty synonymous. The 2 Toa moved as one. And in all the chaos and all the battle, as Mataku watched at the center of the storm, he never felt more safe. A new certainty had put every fear that rattled his heartlight to rest. The Toa were here, and soon all would be right.